Hello and welcome to the Career Success Podcast. I'm Jason Connolly. If you're a regular listener, it's great to have you back. But if you're new, welcome to the show. In this insightful and thought-provoking series, we speak to business leaders and people who have had high levels of career success. But we also talk to up-and-coming and emerging business talent. We speak to such a variety of people all across the globe. We talk about success habits and what they do in order to ensure they stay at the top of their game. Listen and find out hints and tips to help you in the world of business. How do you set up your own company and make sure it's a success? But we also talk about how to drive business growth and get your company noticed. Practical advice to help you in your career from those who have made it. In this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Tanya Fox from Alberta, Canada. After starting her first business in 1998, Tanya quickly realised that entrepreneurship and helping entrepreneurs would be a lifelong passion. She has owned service, retail, and franchise businesses, still running 3 of them today. She also spends her time speaking about why sharing your story is key, and she also records her weekly, very successful Fox Talks business podcast. Tanya always tries to live by her tagline, remember to have fun, because if you're not having fun, then why are you doing it? Tanya, thanks for joining me on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. I'm really excited.
I'm really excited for you to be here. And then tomorrow I'm on your podcast, so I'm really excited
I
about
know.
it.
It's going to be 2 days of just chatting with each other.
Great. So tell me, you started in business in 1998. Tell us a bit about your kind of business journey and what that looked like for you.
So, I come from a very non-entrepreneurial family. So, my father was in the military and my mother worked for the government. So that was what you did. You went to school, you got, hopefully you went to university and got a degree, and then you worked for, 40, 50 years at the same job and retired. And that was pretty much life. And I made it about a year in that genre and realized, I remember sitting at my desk one day and I was working in the government. I was working in taxation. So just what everybody wants to do with their life.
Sounds quite
And
exciting.
and we always had these, like, we all took breaks at exactly the same time because right beside us was a call, like, was part of the call center. So like a little bell would go off and that was everybody's sort of notification, and everybody would get up and they'd, go out for a cigarette or, or just take a walk. And I remember sitting at my desk and watching everybody sort of rising off of their seat. And I thought, it's such like a herd mentality, and I get why they do it, but I was like, I cannot do this for another 40 years. Like, it's literally going to kill my soul. And I was
Mm,
very young at the time, and I thought, I'm just going to branch out onto my own, right? Like, how hard could that be, right? You just build it, they come. And I'd kind of muddled the idea around a little bit, and then I got in trouble at work. I remember being pulled into my boss's office and being reprimanded for helping a client that I had. And because that's not what we were supposed to do. Like, my job was literally to
right.
go in, say, here's all the mistakes you made, and that's it. Not go, if you just filed this form, this would all go away. And I thought, I can't do this. Like, it kind of was feeling like I was starting to have to go against what my values were in just being a person. And so
Mm.
I remember sitting in that meeting, and then they said, do you have anything to say? And I just went, yeah, I think I quit. And then he was like, you actually lasted longer than what I thought you did. And luckily, I had an amazing boss at that time who was really supportive. And he was like, I think you would really do good if you, went and started like even like a bookkeeping company, or because you're really good at it.
Yeah.
And I had my accounting degree. And, so he was like, I really think that you would be good at that. And so I was like, okay, yeah. So yeah, like, I quit. And I was so excited on that Friday. It was a Friday when this all happened. And I went out with friends and we like literally popped champagne and we celebrated. And I was like, this is it. This is the start of my life. And then I woke up on Saturday morning with the worst headache going, what the hell have I done? Like, I left a good paying job. I left a pension. I left like everything. Like, now I have like 3 days to figure out what I'm going to do because eventually I'm going to run out of money.
And I
And
bet your
so
parents were going, "What are you doing, Tanya? You had the job of your dream.
yeah.
You had a stable job for the government
Well, and
and
I'd
a good
always
pension."
right, and I had always been kind of like an impulsive kid and sort of like I would
Yeah,
do any like I tried a bunch of different jobs like when I was a teenager just to experience things. So, it
yeah,
was just like they were kind of like, "Okay, are you sure about this?" And I was like, "Well, I guess the worst case scenario is like I go get a job at like Walmart or I become a cashier like but I think I need to try this." And my mother is like the most supportive person. Like it wouldn't matter what I say to her. Like I could be like, "I'm going to be a garbage man." And she would be like, "That's amazing. You're going to be the best one ever. Like you're not going to tilt any cans over." Like she's just so supportive. So
yeah.
she was like, do what you feel you need to do and just be smart about it." And so that's kind
Sounds
of what
exactly like my mum.
yeah,
Exactly like
so
my
I
mum.
was
Mm,
really fortunate that, I sort of had that background, but a lot of the times now this is going back over 20 years ago, that it wasn't just as easy to kinda, like, Google how to start a business, and you would get all this information. So a lot of it was just, going to, like, in person at the library and trying to, like, just go into other businesses and try to find somebody who would talk to me, who would kind of guide me. And so from having to do that where I couldn't just sit and Google everything, it really was, I find, very beneficial because it allowed me to step out of my comfort zone of asking for help. Because
mm.
that's what I had to do because I couldn't turn to anybody in my family because everybody, kind of was in the corporate world. So it was a good sort of plunge into it, and I made thousands upon thousands of mistakes and learned some very, very hard lessons along the way. Um,
Yeah.
but, that first when I signed that first client, I realized this is it. This is where I'm so excited about this. And then just over time, it expanded where I was like, I want to try retail. And, what's this franchise stuff all about? And, so I really just started diving in and
Wow.
just experiencing other types of entrepreneurship. And now I can't imagine going back. Like now I'm fearful. I was like, I will do anything it takes not to have to go back to that because I think I would be a horrible employee.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, we've got honestly very. I even pick up on we've got very similar energies and similar stories. How old was you when you started the first business, and what was it?
So it was a bookkeeping company that I had started,
Right.
and
Okay.
I was 20 when I started that one, and it was actually like up and going,
Wow, so
and
young as well. To be pitching
yeah,
for. What was it like going out there and because I'm guessing lots of the clients that you were working with were a lot older than you. You
they
pitching up, trying to get that work as such a young person as well.
yeah, it was difficult for 2 reasons, being a woman and because a
Right.
lot of the clients that I had access to that I knew from previous jobs that were my connections were men. So and it was a very male-dominated industry,
Uh,
in the area that I was in. So that
yeah.
was a little bit of a struggle, and then, of course, just being young, right? People are like, "Well, I don't know,
Mm,
you don't have a lot of experience." So it was really just proving myself and taking the time to I had to take some clients that I didn't really want to take, but I kind of took anybody that was willing to say yes for the first little bit because I was just so scared I was going to not have anybody that I was like, it
yeah.
doesn't matter who you are, I'll just sort of take you. But I
Yeah.
had one really good client that I just, I shared my story of and that was the first time I ever shared my story of saying, this is the reason I left my corporate job and this is why I started. And my story really resonated with him. And it wasn't until years later that he said, it was you sharing your story of leaving the corporate world, how it felt for you to have to do things that you didn't think were right that made me want to take a chance on you. And I didn't
Mm.
realize that was the reason why. I thought he was just like, "Meh, she's cheap, we'll take her." you know? So,
It's
I
funny
really
when you look back and hear those stories.
yeah, and it was really interesting that I never realized how much power there was in just being honest, because I was trying to, I always had it in my head. I have to be completely and utterly professional. I have to dress the part. I have to, use the proper words. And I realized that what they wanted was the connection. And so once I started learning that and started sharing my story and actually having real conversations with business owners, I found it was a lot easier to gain more and more clients.
It's so interesting you say that because when I was starting out in business, it's almost like you have to become anti-human,
Yeah.
and be this professional person who's a robot. And I remember when I started out in recruitment, I got no training, no investment at all, and I was just trying to be professional all the times. Yes, sir. No, sir, and all of that way. And it was when I actually started to become a human, that's when business really took off. But it's kind of funny that you have to go sometimes along that journey to get to that point to kind of realize that it's funny in a way.
And it's so true because I remember sitting there, and I would have so many no's of people who are like, "No, you're too young," or "No, we don't think that you're experienced enough," or, "You're not with a big firm. We don't, so we don't want to take you." And so I kept thinking like, "What am I doing wrong? I'm doing everything right. Like I'm dressing the part, I'm speaking the part, I've got all of my degrees and my backgrounds and really great references and all of this other stuff." But the thing that I was missing was, just like you said, being human and making them realize where my passion was. And because I was being so stoic and so businesslike, nobody thought I had any passion for it. And once I started
Mm.
releasing that and being like, this is what I think I can do for you. And I think we could work really well together. And my goal is to help you grow, because if you grow, I grow. And once I started really releasing that part of me, then people would get excited, right? And they would be like, oh, I want to work with this person. Like, I love her energy. And then I realized, oh my God, I've been doing this completely backwards the whole entire time. Because again, I came from that corporate world where that's what you do, right? You sell your
Yeah, yeah.
qualifications. And I realized I don't do that in my personal life. When I'm looking to hire somebody, I want to know, who are they? What do they stand for? And so I
Mm.
realized I was doing the opposite of even what I looked for. But you don't see that in the moment, right? It's all hindsight.
Oh, it definitely is, and I've been there. I've worn the T-shirt, and I totally relate. And your younger self was, trying to think, oh, what is it that's going on? I need to be more professional. I need to be more this. Need to demonstrate this more. And actually, what it was, you just being you. Talk us through kind of because obviously you've had lots of business. Talk us through where you went from there, how you got into obviously having the franchise businesses, retail, and so on. It's an interesting story.
Hmm. So I have, still to this day, I have the bookkeeping company. So it's the one that I've never been able to get rid of, because it was sort of it's the
Your
baby. It's the
baby,
the one
yeah.
I can never release. So I'm not as quite as directly involved as what I used to be, because of course I have staff that do it all for me now. But so that one is still running. And when that one started getting to the point where it was almost sort of running itself, I had really great staff in place and everything was sort of smooth. I found myself kind of going, well, I'm a little bored now because I made this run. Because I knew, after reading so many books, the idea of a business is to create it so that it could run without me there. And I had done that really well, but I was like, great, now it's actually running without needing me. So now what do I do? And so I
Mm.
decided to sort of make a move, and I had moved across to the other side of the country and looking for something new. And I ended up meeting my husband. And he at the time had a martial arts studio. And so I kind of, as we were dating, I was hanging out, and then my entrepreneurial brain was going, that I was like, we need to change some things. And so after we had kind of moved in together, I was like, hey, can I just change a few things here and there? And I kind of eased into it. And then he was like, I don't care, do whatever. Like, and so I jumped with both feet in and kind of sort of did this
Yeah.
whole like company revamp. And then that sort of started running really smoothly. And together we had been faced with an opportunity to purchase a Canada Bread franchise, so commercial bread delivery. And
Oh
my
wow.
husband, the taekwondo was kind of like an evening thing. So he also had a daytime job and was working for this company. And they said, you're a really good employee, but we wondered if you would be interested in a franchise. So we jumped into that world, which, is a world that I would never jump into again. Um, I think
Why is that?
franchises,
Because I've got my own thoughts on franchises, but why do you say that?
what happens, I find, is if you start in a franchise, and this one was already built. I mean, the company had been around for 100 years, but what happens
Yeah.
is it almost turns into like an ivory tower scenario where you're getting all of this stuff that's being filtered down from the people in an
Mm,
office. Ours was very much delivery. So there was a lot of driving, a lot of routes. They would look at a map and be like, here, we're going to restructure all of the routes. And meanwhile, the driver's going, no, 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 this doesn't make any sense. And
right.
but there wasn't that communication wasn't happening among all of the franchise. And I see this quite frequently, even with my clients who are in franchises, is that all of a sudden it gets so big and then those people forget what it's like to be on the ground. And so
Mm,
their decisions are sort of made without taking that into consideration. I'm not saying all franchises are like this, but any of the ones that I've
mm,
encountered. So, it's almost like they lose sight of the heart, which is the franchisees. That's the heart of your business. And so
yeah.
there's a lot of
But you are the customer, really. You are the end user. But it's
right.
kind of weird in a way because no, you're not. But you are. You're the thing that keeps the business going, and you lose the dressing room on side, which is the franchisee, and you've got a problem.
Yeah. And usually the ones that are really successful, like we got, our route ended up being really large. It was one of the largest ones, but they weren't taking, we were, of course, giving them suggestions and saying, here's ideas that we have from the ground that would work. And
Yeah.
when we decided to leave, it was because they ended up going through a buyout with this new company, and the new company just said, no, we don't want any suggestions. And then I went, I don't really want to be part of a dictatorship. Like, if I can't grow my
Mm.
portion of my business, then what's the point? All I'm doing is making you money. And so we decided to just sell. It worked out really good. There was a merger, and then it was like, you can either
Yeah.
stay or you can take the buyout package. And we were like, ding, we'll take the buyout package. Like, we just
You
don't want to
strike
go
me as
through this.
such an entrepreneurial person, not someone that necessarily would conform within the rules. And if you've got an idea that you think is a good idea, you want to run with that idea if you think something's going to make the business better. So I wouldn't necessarily think you would strike me as someone who'd be a franchise business owner anyway.
It was a fantastic experience for me to sort of
Mm,
see the inner workings of how it all went together and following, the rules. But there was a lot of stuff too when you sort of have that mind that you look at and you go like, for example, we were owned by a larger company that was a meat company and they did hot dogs. And so we were like, why aren't you putting a coupon for the hot dog wieners on the hot dog buns? And like connect the two companies together. Like that just kind of made sense. And they were like, no, 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 no. And it took like 3 years before they finally did that. And so in my head, I'm like, oh my God, like this just makes sense. Right. So it was those kind of things that, we were just in a situation where the company just wasn't set up to sort of take that opinions. And again, there's always a bigger picture. So who knows? Like maybe they were like, it doesn't work logistically, or I don't know. But, it really did teach me, a lot of agreements, of, contracts. So I definitely wouldn't give up the experience, but I definitely won't do it again.
Well, I do think I'm, very similar. I think that some of the businesses I've been in, I wouldn't necessarily say that they were successful in their own right, but the lessons I learned from the way that they'd done things that wasn't perhaps so great is what really gave me a great idea on how to do things better when I'd done it myself.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
exactly what I felt that experience was. It just, I even wrote down, I still have my book from it, of all of the things that I was like, if I were to ever franchise, these are the things that I would want to make sure that I always do. So I haven't gotten to that point yet, but if I do, I hope I remember to go back to that notebook and, and look at it. So,
I bet
um,
it would be a good read.
yeah, there's some interesting stuff. And then after when we had stopped doing the franchise, my dad had gotten quite ill. And
Mm,
I remember going to see him in the hospital, and he was in palliative care. And he sort of looked at me and said, you've always wanted to I'm very much a crafter. I love anything with crafting, and I always thought it would be really cool to own a craft store. And he says, like, why haven't you ever done that? And I was like, well, I mean, I had all of the excuses. I don't know. I don't know if I really want to do retail, and oh, I don't know, and maybe it's not for
Yeah,
me, and there's a lot of work, and I just had every excuse known to man. And
the critic in
my
your head.
yeah. And so I remember sitting with him, and he always used to say to me, you need to take a chance sometimes. And my dad retired early from the military, and my mom ended up being able to leave early as well. And they bought a boat and they sailed the world. And
Oh.
a lot, and it's a little boat. It was like 35 feet. So it wasn't like a yacht. And there were some times where they lived, pennies to pennies and stuff like that. And my mom would work like little odd jobs for like fresh fruit and stuff like that in the islands.
Oh.
But my dad said, like, if everybody told me not to do it, but if I wouldn't have done it, I would have stayed in my job and retired, in my 60s like you're supposed to. And I would have been retired for maybe 2 years. And now I'm dying. Whereas I took a chance and I had 20 amazing years traveling the world and living on a boat. So what is your excuse? And I was like, well, that's not fair. You can't use your deathbed against me for making choices. But it was really true. And he says, like, what is the worst that's going to happen? He's like, I remember you being 3 years old and your brother wanted to be an astronaut and a lawyer. You wanted to be a cashier. So if all else fails, and he's like, think of the way you look at things. If all else fails and you try this retail store and it doesn't go well, then you become a cashier at like a grocery store or at like a chain store. And either way, you're living your dream. And I was like, I guess, yeah, that's a different way to look at it. So I came home and I said to my husband, I'm going to open up a craft store. And he was like, okay. And then that's how I got into the world of retail, which was a wonderful world. And I absolutely, I really did love it. But after about 5 years, I was done with people.
Oh, well, I can definitely relate to you there. In some ways, what an anecdotal story, though. Really interesting. So you dedicate your time now to helping entrepreneurs and to see failures that can be turned into successes and how to look at them differently. And it's from this kind of, well, the school of hard knocks, as you say. Tell us a bit about kind of the passion that you've got now and what you do to support entrepreneurs and why that drives you so much.
I think it probably started from, it really spurred when I started the retail store because I remember we were going through a tough time in the city I lived in. And I remember talking to other store owners. There was sort of like a collective group of the downtown businesses that would get together. And I remember, constantly asking, like, how are things going for you guys? And people going, oh, good. No, it's great. And I would be like, really? Because like I had like three people yesterday. Like I think I made like 5 cents an hour if I really added up. And they were like, oh my God, me too. It's so slow. And I started to realize like this is a common thread. Like everybody is trying to portray a persona of, success all the time. And I thought, I need to be the person that lets people know it's okay to say, hey, you know what? I need some help. Can you send people my way? And so I started
Yeah.
really experimenting with that and saying, hey, stuff is really slow for me. Could you send people? And I realized that once I started opening up and saying, hey, I'm doing this thing and it's not really working. Do you have any advice? Can you help me out? That other people are so willing to help you, but not until you ask. And that was a tough lesson because asking for help is very, very hard for me because when I started all of my businesses, like I said, I didn't really have anybody in the family. So I had to figure out all of the stuff by myself. So I had to swallow a lot of pride to say, hey, I could really use, some help. And part of that was, like I said, just helping other entrepreneurs realize that a failure is only a failure if we learn nothing from it. And again, this is a lesson. It's not coming from my mouth. It's coming, from my mother because she always said to me, you can turn any failure into a success just by learning a lesson. If you make a mistake and you learn a lesson and you remember that lesson, it's no longer a failure. Now it's a success. And so I started to realize I wanted to share this with other people because it helped me
Yeah.
kind of not be the one who is, feeling like I'm the only one who's failing at business. And now, with the way the world is and everybody is on social media and everybody
Yeah.
sort of has, this curtain that are starting to pull the curtain back and going, hey, I didn't just wake up and become successful. Here's the times I was crying in my closet, eating like a pint of ice cream because I didn't know how I was going to make it. And so I wanted to be a part of that movement because I think, one, it's very freeing for businesses. It's very hard to do, but it's easy to sort of jump on the bandwagon of going, you know what? Yeah, I've had that issue too, or yeah, I'm suffering. And those people who are successful, who have surpassed that, like I did, I thought it's important for me to also share the low times and how I got out, because there's going to be somebody else who's in that pit right now who's going to go,
Mm.
nobody understands. I'm here by myself, right? Why is this person so successful? What are they doing so different? Meanwhile, all they really need to hear is, I've been there and this is what I did to get out.
I think you make some really, really interesting points. I think that I relate to a lot of what you're saying in regards to asking for help. I think you started in a place where no one else was like you, was running businesses, and that wasn't your default position. But it was very similar for me. No one in my family had ever owned a business. I knew I wanted to own a business. In actual fact, I think I only started asking for help in the last 18 months of running the business, and I've been like probably very similar to you, made a million mistakes. But I
Mhm.
absolutely love what you say about failure and it only being a failure if you learn nothing from it. Absolutely great. Love that quote. But I do agree with you. I think that if that isn't your default position, asking for help is a scary thing. And I sort of thought that I had to figure out the kind of everything for myself. I listened to a lot of audiobooks, but asking for help was just something I never ever did. So I completely relate to that. Do you think we live in a world though where, because I'm not a big social media person, just generally, I do use it and I do use it to connect with people, and more so since I've been doing these podcasts actually. But do you think we live in a world now where kind of everything looks fabulous, everything looks filtered, and that's kind of encouraging people sometimes to not ask for help as much because success a lot of the time looks easy because people don't always put out about the struggles. Yes, there is some of that out there, but we also live in a filtered society. Would you agree with that?
For sure. And I think what happens is, of course, you don't hear from somebody until they're at the top, right? Um,
Yeah.
just just that's the way it works. So then people go, well, it's easy for them. I mean, look how popular they are. But everybody started with no followers. Everybody started with no clients, but we don't hear about
Mm.
that a lot. And I think we went through, probably, an 8-year span where everybody was only putting the best of the best. So only their huge successes and everything out on social media. So that's all people were seeing. And I think we're starting to see a shift now where people are being a little bit more honest about some of their struggles because they're realizing that that's making them more human. And it's actually increasing the amount of people that want to follow them or that want to take advice from them because they realize you get where I am. And I know, like, even for me, I think if I go to somebody and I have a problem with my business and I'm looking for somebody to help solve that problem, I want to know that they've been there. I don't want to know that they've just read about it or they know the statistics on it. I want to know that they've been in the mud and they understand what I'm going through. And so I think we're
Mm.
starting to see that shift. I think it's a slow shift because, again, I think people are scared that by asking for help, it means or it makes them feel like they're doing something wrong or that they're failing. And I think
Yeah.
that's just, sharing and continuously being like, hey, look at this stupid thing I did. Don't do this. And I think the more that as business owners we can do that, the more we're going to sort of get rid of that, that everything is beautiful and everything is in a glass
Yeah.
bubble. And we're going to start to realize that
Mm.
all of these people that we look up to have been where you are, still struggle. And I don't think no matter how big you get in business, you're always going to have those days where you think, what have I done? What am I doing? This isn't working. That's never changed for me. No matter what successes I've had, there's always been times where I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not smart enough to do this. Why did I say yes to this? But I think it's being honest with that's what people are looking for. They're looking for that honesty. They want to know, hey, I'm with you. I'll crawl into the pits with you and I'll get dirty with you.
I absolutely love your ethos, and I think what you're saying is, imagine if we lived in a world where everyone was able to be themselves on these platforms and ask for help, and imagine what we could do in this connected world if everybody adapted that ethos. And yeah, I do agree with what you're saying. I think the world is slowly moving in that direction, but slowly it is
Hmm.
probably the kind of main word there. What advice would you give to someone now from obviously learning all these lessons, the mountain of lessons that you've learned? What advice would you give to someone now, maybe starting out in business or someone that's got a business which, they might be in the thick of it at the moment with COVID?
I think probably the biggest piece of advice that I usually give to most people is start having conversations with those businesses that are around you. And because it can lead to so much. And it's just introducing yourself. It's even, if you're a retail store, it's walking into other stores and saying, hi, I'm this person who owns this store. Let's talk, and just striking up that friendship and that conversation. And if you're an online business, it's actually being interactive with people and with your clients, because the best advice I ever got was asking those people that follow me and going, what do you like? What do you not like that I do? And it can be hard to take that feedback sometimes, because you will get those people who will tell you exactly what they think, whether you want to hear it or not. Um,
Mm,
but it's all about conversation and sharing your story, why you started what you started. I think that's the best thing for a new business, is
yeah.
keep sharing that story of, I started this because that helps you do two things. It helps other people to relate to you, but it also helps you to remember your passion and remember why you got into this. Because there are going to be times where you are like, that's it, I'm out, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore. And we have to get back to that. Why did I start this? I got to remember that feeling of when I first started and I was excited and giddy and I was like, yeah, I'm going to conquer the world. And for me, it's
Sometimes it's
just,
easy to lose sight on that one point, though, isn't it? When you're struggling in a business, sometimes it can be difficult to actually remember those initial drivers in the first place. So, because sometimes it's like a rabbit in headlights, isn't it?
well, and you get stuck, right? Like, every single business that I have started, I've gotten stuck in the minutia, right? Like, I forget the bigger picture, and I'm just so busy doing day-to-day stuff that I forget that. So I like to keep notes, or what I actually do now is I will actually do a video on my computer when I'm really excited about a new project, and I'll just video myself, like talking to myself, and be like, this is what I'm going to do and this is the idea I have. And then when I get stuck, I go back and I watch that video and I go, oh my God, that girl was so excited for this. I've got to find that again. So,
Oh,
even just
wow.
doing that little thing helps, because you get the video as well as the audio of your facial features and how excited you are and how amazing this idea is. Even if you never do it, it's still contagious. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh
Mm.
my God, I was so excited. Look at me go. Like, that girl was going to take on the world. I need to find her again. So even simple stuff like that, or even just writing
Mm.
it down, how excited you were about something. But I find, for me, I'm a very visual person. So I really like, watching my facial features and, you know, I get excited about myself. That sounds weird, but it's true.
No, I can totally relate. I'm a very, very visual person as well, and I've actually done very similar exercises myself. But I think that's really a great advice, and what I've kind of really taken from talking to you is about talking about your story and about just being human, and sometimes going out there and talking to people. And I think that's such a great kind of spirit, especially in the world that we're living in now, where people are struggling. Don't kind of go introverted and go into your cave. Actually go out there, because there's probably so many people out there like you who are in that situation, who would really probably welcome you with open arms. And I think that's such a great kind of note to kind of conclude things. Tell us what's next for you then. What your passion at the moment is really helping other people. And I can just feel that from talking to you. But what's kind of next for you? What continues to drive you?
Right now is just that. I mean, I've got some great new clients that we're working, with. We're
Mm,
sort of branching off into a new thing to help people find their passion again. So we're, working directly with businesses that are like, that's it, I'm stuck. I just feel like I'm doing day-to-day stuff. So we're helping sort of pull them out of that and,
yeah.
whether that be in rebranding or just really finding that excitement again of why they got into business. Or we had one just recently that, our suggestion was get out because you're just not going to find this passion again. Like it's time. It's
Yeah.
time to walk away. So working with clients is always, and then my podcast is always my passion because I get to meet amazing people like you and I get to, help people to share their stories, which is what I'm all about. And so that's really, those are probably my two main things that I get excited to get up for every day.
Fabulous, and I totally agree. That's why I love doing podcasts too. If people want to find out more about you, Tanya, or they want to find out more about the podcast, where can they go to?
So the best place to find everywhere you can connect with me is on our website, which is foxtalksbusiness.ca. And then you can find everywhere that you can connect with me on there.
Right, it's been absolutely delightful talking to you. Thanks so much for coming on this episode. I think you made some really valid points. You heard it there. If you do want to connect with Tanya, you can go to foxtalksbusiness.ca. I'm Jason Connolly. That was Tanya Fox. This is the Career Success Podcast. Until next time, goodbye.